guy. It gets an email address out of what's called the Whois database. And then it goes, hey, DNS, where the hell is its mail server? And then it sends a mail and says, can I actually provide this certificate? And if you mail back and say, yeah, it's fine, it will go ahead and issue a certificate, which is returned to the user. And now you have a certificate for www.whatever.com. Now, some of you in the audience, if you're an x509 guy, you might say, oh, you're totally oversimplifying. It doesn't work like that in my system. Screw you. The world doesn't use your system. This is how it really works. What I just described is called domain validation. Now look, there are totally better CAs out there. I bet there are better CAs run by people in this room. They do like DUNS lookups and phone calls. They like send a lawyer to get a blood sample. And that's all great and wonderful, except the browser does not give a shit. Because there are totally crappier CAs out there, and they're just as good for providing a lock. The first, and this is not elite, this is not cool, this is not crazy ass stuff, that's for later in this talk. This is why x509 isn't working that well. You cannot exclude crappy certificate authorities. If you have one certificate authority that is great, I mean a total boutique shop, and they'll give you a lock only if you do something hardcore. And then you have these other guys. The fact that the other guys are out there creates a race to the bottom. The bad guy doesn't attack the good people. The bad guy attacks the really lame people and ultimately gets a certificate just the same. This has created a race to the bottom. Now, DNS does not have this trait. DNS has 3 separate layers, all of which just are completely immune to this sort of attack. You start with the root. The DNS roots are an utter pain in the ass to deal with. This is great because it means the bad guys can't deal with them. There's this old quote in cryptography which says a certificate authority is only as good as the money they refuse to take. The root will not take your money. This is awesome and wonderful. The root is basically an adjunct of the very same state system that provides concepts such as Belgium and Austria and the Netherlands. So the root really does not care what money you throw at it. It's just not accepting your stuff. Next layer, you have the registries. You have VeriSign that owns Com. You have Affiliates that owns Org. You have individual companies that, yes, they individually could be bribed, but yes, they have an area that they have exclusive control and exclusive accountability. There was a top-level domain that was filled with spyware to the brim. Every name that it would look up, if you saw a lookup to this TLD, you were pretty sure your network was infected. You know what happened? The registry behind it said, holy crap, we're starting to lose money. We're going to go clean up our mess. And right now, that TLD, because one company was behind it, it got cleaned up. Bad stuff got taken off the internet. Cool. Finally, we have the registrars. And I don't know if people understand how interesting this system is. It would be a pain in the ass if you had only one company, you had to go to them if you wanted to go ahead and deal with a com name or an org name. So the system they built was segmented. You had these registrars, and they would be your interface to VeriSign or Affiliates or whatever registry you wanted to deal with. And here's what's fascinating. Let's say you have a decent registry, and let's say you have a really crappy registry. For example, some New Zealand registry had a really bad SQL injection bug, and Microsoft got hit, and a bunch of other big names got hit. You know what all of those big companies were able to do? They were able to take their name, remove it from the crappy registrar, and move it to someone decent. You can't do that in x509. You can't say, I don't want to be vulnerable to this crappy CA. I just want to have all my risk in this bucket. This is a system where you can move your risk to map to what you can actually do something about risk. You can manage it. You can deal with it. Now, it is possible to prevent yourself from being exposed to an untrusted certificate authority. It's just extraordinarily painful. You have to run a private certificate authority inside of your own enterprise. And lots of people go ahead and try to do this, and it's really expensive, and it's really difficult to maintain, and time after time, companies find out, oh wait, I have to deal with other companies. And how do I interact with other CAs? Now there is a certificate authority system called the Federal Bridge CA. It allows various groups in the United States government to actually authenticate against one another. It's a miracle the damn thing works. This was not done at small expense. Everyone who built it deserves a medal for making it happen. For the rest of us, I'd like an authentication technology that does not deserve a medal if you get it to work. Look, interoperability not actually optional. The only people who think that large companies are individual groups that are all hive mind are people who have never actually worked at large companies. The reality is any large company is a collection of tiny little organizations that share a name and fight amongst themselves and hopefully don't let it get shown too much publicly. Everyone who clapped has totally been there. Cross-organizational authentication and operation is the rule. It is not the exception. This is your life. You have to be able to deal with people outside your org. You have to be able to identify them. You have to be able to work with them. You have to be able to get things done with them. Passwords work. If you have a string of text, that same string of text works with your org. That same string of text works with their org. That same string of text works with frickin' Yahoo. That is not something you can say with all of your smart cards unless you do things with extraordinary expense. That is a major reason why they've all been blowing up in your face. So, there's also the slight problem of delegation. X509 has a real problem. You would think with all of the complexities of being able to change certificates, of being able to say, I delegate this right to you, and this certificate leads to this certificate, and whatnot, you would think that it would actually be useful. You, my friends, would be wrong. The reason why X509 delegation is not useful is because a certain attribute was optional, something called name constraints. What name constraints let you do is the same thing that DNS lets you do. Say that you have control over a portion of the namespace. I cannot go to VeriSign and get a certificate for doxpera.com. I can't do it. I can't go to VeriSign, I can't go to Digicert, I can't go to Thought. I can get a certificate for an individual host at Doxpera. I can get a certificate for Wildcard, which would say, oh, all my devices will just have the same decryption key. That's a great idea. But I can't go ahead and actually become a participant in the X509 system because name constraints not actually reliably supported. This is a disaster. This means I need to go ahead and deal with an outside company every single time I add a node to my network. Every time I get a new box, okay, hey VeriSign, I got a new box. Hey VeriSign, I got a new box. And guess what happens? This is expensive. This is operationally inconvenient. This has potential information disclosure issues. And holy hell, is it a disaster for devices. Devices cannot be shipped with certificates built in. So what we end up with is self-signed certificates, which are also known as worthless. Now, DNS, by contrast, delegates very well. You have root, it delegates to COM. You have COM, it delegates to doxpera.com. You know how much I deal with the root and deal with VeriSign when I add a new host to my network? I don't deal with them at all. Let me tell you, all of my hosts are in DNS. Most of those hosts don't have SSL certificates. Think about that for a moment. That's probably the exact same way it is in all of your organizations. Cross-organizational dependency on some outside company dealing with your stuff leads to things not getting dealt with. Now, it is in fact possible to delegate with X509, but oh my